The Forbidden Gaze. The floating palace of Iridessa gleamed like a suspended jewel beneath twin auroras that painted the night sky in ribbons of emerald and sapphire. Kale Navar adjusted the formal collar of his diplomatic uniform, feeling distinctly out of place among the ethereal beauty surrounding him. As humanity's chosen ambassador, he'd been briefed extensively on Luminari customs. Their formal greetings, their ceremonial silence, their careful emotional restraint, but nothing had prepared him for the reality of their world. The festival of twin auroras filled the grand crystalline hall with soft, haunting music that seemed to emanate from the very walls. Luminari nobles glided past in flowing garments that shifted color with their movements, their skin adorned with intricate markings that glowed with subtle inner light. Kale stood near a pillar carved from translucent stone, observing the careful choreography of alien aristocracy. Then the procession began. She entered through the eastern arch, and Kale's breath caught. Crown Princess Seraphine moved with impossible grace, her silver gown flowing around her like liquid moonlight. Unlike the others, whose markings glowed in soft blues and greens, hers traced patterns of deep violet across her temples and collarbone, pulsing gently with each heartbeat. Her eyes, vast and luminous, swept across the assembled crowd with practiced detachment. Until they found his. Kale knew he should look away. Every protocol officer had warned him, never hold a Luminari royal's gaze for more than 3 seconds. But something kept him frozen, watching as those incredible eyes widened slightly. For just a moment, her violet markings flickered brighter, a reaction he'd been told Luminari royalty never displayed in public. The court's gentle murmur quieted. Seraphine altered her path, moving toward him with deliberate steps. Her expression remained serene, but Kale could see the curiosity burning beneath the surface as she stopped mere feet away. "Why do you watch me so boldly, human?" Her voice was cool water over stone, yet something warm lurked in its depths. The entire hall seemed to hold its breath. Kale leaned forward slightly, close enough that only she could hear his words. "Because you're my queen." The violet markings along her throat blazed brilliant for half a heartbeat before she controlled them. Around them, the court erupted in shocked whispers. No one, certainly no human, had ever addressed the crown princess with such intimate warmth, such audacious sincerity. Seraphine's lips parted slightly, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, the princess felt something stir in the carefully guarded chamber of her heart. Crossing the crystal wastes. The crystalline desert stretched endlessly before them, its surface reflecting fractured starlight in 1,000 directions. Marcus's lungs burned as they ran, Seraphine's hand still clasped in his, pulling him forward with surprising strength. Behind them, the whine of pursuit vehicles grew louder. "There!" Seraphine pointed toward a formation of towering crystal spires jutting from the ground like frozen lightning. They dove between the structures just as energy blasts scorched the sand where they'd been standing. Marcus pressed his back against the cool crystal surface, gasping. Seraphine peered around the edge, her expression focused and fierce. In the chaos of their escape, he'd barely processed what was happening. Now, hidden in this alien landscape with a princess from a supposedly extinct civilization, reality crashed over him. "How is any of this possible?" he whispered. She turned to him, and in the reflected light of the crystals, her features seemed to shift between human and something ethereal. "The relic doesn't lie. It searched across galaxies for you specifically. Your DNA carries an echo of the ancient Celesteborn, perhaps an ancestor touched by our people millennia ago. That trace makes you compatible with our energy matrix." "And if I refuse?" Pain flickered across her face. "My people fade completely. And you?" She hesitated. "The connection has already begun. Can't you feel it?" Marcus realized he could. A warmth in his chest, a pull toward her that felt deeper than attraction. When their eyes met, something resonated between them like a struck chord. The sound of their pursuers forced them deeper into the crystal forest. Hours passed as they navigated the labyrinth, until exhaustion finally slowed them. Seraphine stumbled, and Marcus caught her, feeling wetness on her side. Blood, crimson but shot through with threads of silver. "You're hurt," he said, alarmed. "It's nothing," she protested, but her voice was weak. Marcus guided her to sit against a large crystal formation. "Let me see." His archaeologist training included field medicine. He carefully lifted the torn fabric of her garment, revealing a deep gash along her ribs. His hands worked automatically, using supplies from his pack, but he was acutely aware of the warmth of her skin, the way she watched his face. "Why did you stay?" Seraphine asked softly. "Your team left. You could have been safe." Marcus met her eyes as he bandaged the wound. "I've spent my whole life searching for proof that we're not alone. That there's something more out there." His hand rested gently on her side. "I guess I found it." Her hand covered his, and where they touched, tiny sparks of light danced across their skin. Both of them stared at the phenomenon, visible proof of their connection. "Marcus," she whispered, and the way she said his name made something in his chest tighten. "I'm sorry you were drawn into this." He didn't pull away. "I'm not." The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility. In the distance, the sound of engines had faded, giving them a temporary reprieve. Seraphine leaned her head against his shoulder, and Marcus found himself holding her, this impossible woman who had walked out of legend and into his life. "There's an abandoned observatory," she murmured, fatigue finally claiming her. 3 miles north. We'll be safe there, for a while." Marcus looked up at the stars visible through the crystal formations, their reflection multiplied infinitely around them. His old life as a solitary archaeologist felt like it belonged to someone else. "Then we'll make it there. Together." The Forest of Echoes. The observatory rose from the forest floor like a skeletal hand reaching toward the heavens, its dome cracked but still intact. But it was the forest surrounding it that stole Marcus's breath, trees with translucent trunks that pulsed with inner light, their leaves shimmering between solid and ethereal. "The Forest of Echoes," Seraphine said, her wound already healing faster than seemed possible. "It responds to emotion, to memory. Be careful what you think here." As they entered the tree line, Marcus understood. The air itself seemed alive, and shadows moved between the trunks, not threats, but reflections. He saw himself as a boy, alone in his father's library, losing himself in books about ancient civilizations. The memory played out silently beside them as they walked. "It shows our truths," Seraphine explained, and Marcus noticed her watching her own echoes, a young princess studying forbidden texts, sneaking away from palace duties to explore the cosmos. The forest grew denser, and their reflections more intimate. Marcus saw himself in his university office, colleagues laughing at his theories about the Celesteborn. The loneliness of those years washed over him fresh and sharp. Beside him, Seraphine's echo showed her standing before an empty throne room, the last of her kind, her people fading like extinguished stars around her. A sound escaped her throat, half sob, half gasp. Without thinking, Marcus took her hand. The forest responded, and suddenly their reflections merged. They saw themselves as they were now, two people from impossible circumstances, finding each other across the darkness of space. But the forest showed more, possible futures, timelines branching like the trees around them. In one reflection, Marcus stood alone, having refused the connection, growing old with his regrets. In another, Seraphine faded to nothing, the last light of her people dying. But in a third, the one that drew them both, they stood together, transformed but whole, surrounded by something new being born. "Do you see it?" Seraphine whispered, stopping beneath a tree whose canopy seemed made of captured starlight. "What we could become." Marcus turned to her, and in the bioluminescent glow, she was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. Not because of her alien grace, but because of the hope in her eyes, the vulnerability she showed only to him. "I see you," he said simply. "Not a prophecy or a genetic match. You." Her breath caught. "Marcus." The words dissolved as he leaned in, giving her every chance to pull away. She didn't. Their lips met softly at first, tentative, then with growing certainty. The forest erupted around them in cascades of light, the trees responding to the surge of emotion. Where their bodies touched, that same energy sparked and danced, visible proof of their deepening bond. When they finally parted, both breathless, Seraphine's eyes were bright with tears. "This isn't just the prophecy," she said. "What I feel, it's real." "I know." Marcus brushed a strand of silver hair from her face. "I feel it too." A distant sound shattered the moment, engines, voices, the systematic search of armed forces. They'd been found again. Seraphine's expression hardened with determination. The observatory. We can hide there until... Until when? Marcus asked, though he took her hand as they started running. They won't stop. Then we keep running, she said fiercely. Until we reach the starlit shore. There's something there I need to tell you. Something about what completing this bond truly means. They burst from the forest just as energy blasts began tearing through the translucent trees. Marcus looked back once, seeing their final echo, two figures running hand in hand, choosing each other despite the odds. The observatory's entrance loomed ahead, and together they disappeared into its shadows, leaving their pursuers behind once more. When hearts defy thrones. The council chamber had never felt so suffocating. Seraphine stood before the assembled officials, Kale beside her despite Voron's protests that humans had no place in royal deliberations. Her parents sat at the head of the table, their expressions unreadable. You ask the impossible, High Chancellor Voron said, his tone sharp as broken glass. Centuries of tradition, the alliance with Tyralis, the very stability of our realm, all cast aside for what? A fleeting infatuation with an outsider. It's not fleeting. Seraphine's voice remained steady, though her markings pulsed with barely contained emotion. And he has a name. Kale has shown me more genuine care in days than I've received in cycles of royal protocol. Princess, please reconsider. Lord Cassian, one of her father's oldest advisors, spoke gently. The human cannot understand our ways, our needs. What happens when his feelings fade? When he ages while you remain? You condemn yourself to heartbreak. Kale stepped forward. I understand I'm the obstacle here. I never meant to disrupt your world. He turned to Seraphine, and the pain in his eyes nearly broke her. If my leaving would protect you, your position, everything you've worked for, I'll go. Right now. I'll walk away if that's what's best. No. Seraphine grasped his hand fiercely. Don't you dare noble yourself out of this. I won't let you. Her father finally spoke, his voice heavy with authority. This council is adjourned. We will reconvene tomorrow at dawn. His eyes found his daughter's. Seraphine, you and I will speak privately. But Seraphine shook her head. She pulled Kale toward the chamber doors, her decision crystallizing. Father, mother, council, I love you all. I love Iridessa. But I also love him, and I will not apologize for it. Tomorrow you may decree whatever you wish, but tonight is ours. She led Kale through winding corridors to her private chambers, sealing the doors behind them. The room glowed softly with bioluminescent vines that climbed the walls, casting everything in gentle blue-green light. Seraphine, you don't have to, Kale began. She silenced him with a kiss, deeper and more urgent than before. I've spent my entire life doing what I have to do. Tonight, I'm doing what I want to do. Her fingers found the fastenings of his formal jacket. Unless you don't. I want this. I want you. His hands trembled slightly as they traced the elegant curve of her neck, following the glowing patterns down to her shoulders. I've wanted you since that first moment in the hall. They moved together to her bed, a platform suspended by crystalline supports that chimed softly. Seraphine's gown dissolved at her touch, luminary fabric designed to respond to intention. Kale's breath caught at the sight of her, markings tracing intricate paths across her skin, pulsing brighter with each heartbeat. You're breathtaking, he whispered. So are you. She helped him shed the rest of his clothing, marveling at the warmth of human skin, so different from her own cool luminescence. They explored each other slowly, reverently. Every touch sent cascades of light rippling across Seraphine's markings. When they finally joined, she cried out softly, her entire body blazing violet bright. Kale held her close, moving with her in perfect rhythm as if they'd been created for this moment. Afterward, they lay tangled together, her head resting on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. Whatever happens tomorrow, she murmured, this was worth it. You are worth it. Kale pressed a kiss to her forehead. We'll face it together. But dawn brought devastation. Alarms shrieked through the palace. Kale woke to find royal guards surrounding the bed, and Seraphine being pulled from his arms. High Chancellor Voron stood in the doorway, triumph gleaming in his ancient eyes. An assassination attempt has been made on Prince Tyralis, Voron announced. Evidence points to human interference. Ambassador Navarre, you are under arrest for conspiracy against the crown. No. Seraphine struggled against the guards holding her. He was with me all night. This is a fabrication. Princess, your compromised judgment in this matter is precisely why the council must act. Voron gestured, and the guards began dragging Kale away. Seraphine's markings flared with rage. She tore free from the guards and ran after them, her voice echoing through the halls. Release him. By my authority as Crown Princess, I command you. But Voron had prepared for this. More guards appeared, gently but firmly restraining her as Kale disappeared from view. Within hours, the entire court assembled in the grand hall. Seraphine stood before them, no longer the compliant princess they'd known. Her markings blazed defiant violet as she addressed the crowd. I stand before you not just as your princess, but as a woman who has found something precious, something real. Her voice carried to every corner of the vast space. I love Kale Navarre. I love his honesty, his warmth, his courage. He did not attempt assassination. He would never harm anyone. This accusation is a manipulation by those who fear change. She turned to face her parents on their thrones. Mother, father, I know you've taught me duty above all else. But what is duty without heart? What is leadership without understanding love? Queen Ivessa's expression softened, but King Aldris remained stern. The council will vote, he announced heavily, on whether Princess Seraphine has compromised her position beyond repair, and whether she and the human must be exiled for the good of Iridessa. Seraphine felt the chamber tilt. Exile meant losing everything, her home, her people, her purpose. But as she thought of Kale locked away somewhere, probably terrified and alone, she realized she'd already made her choice. Then let them vote, she said quietly. But know this, I will not abandon him. Whatever you decide, we face it together. The chamber fell silent as the council began to deliberate her fate. Love beyond boundaries. The council chamber felt like a tomb. Seraphine stood with her chin raised, refusing to show the fear coursing through her. Kale had been brought from detention, standing beside her with visible bruises but unbowed spirit. Their hands remained joined despite Voron's disapproving glare. The vote was about to commence when the chamber doors burst open. Princess Mirel, Seraphine's younger sister, strode in with unusual determination. At only 19 cycles, she rarely attended council meetings, preferring her studies in ancient texts. But now she carried a crystalline tablet, its surface glowing with archived data. Before you vote, Mirel announced, there's something the council must see. This is highly irregular, Voron protested. So is condemning your future queen for loving someone. Mirel activated the tablet, projecting ancient text across the chamber walls. These are the chronicles of the founding era. Before our people became so rigid, so isolated. She walked the perimeter as she read. The third queen bonded with a Valtorian trader. The seventh king married a wandering scholar from beyond the veil. In each case, the union brought prosperity, new knowledge, strength through diversity. She stopped before her parents. Our ancestors understood that love transcending boundaries makes us stronger, not weaker. King Aldris leaned forward, studying the ancient texts with new interest. Mirel continued, her voice gaining strength. The evidence against Kale is circumstantial at best. The real attempt on Tyralis was made by his own rivals. I found communication records in the archives that Voron conveniently ignored. She turned to face the High Chancellor. You feared losing your influence, so you manufactured a crisis. Voron's face darkened, but he couldn't refute data from the sacred archives. Queen Ivessa rose from her throne, descending the steps to stand before her daughter. She cupped Seraphine's face gently, her own markings pulsing with emotion. I remember, she said softly, when your father and I first bonded. My parents disapproved, He was from a rival house. The match was deemed politically unwise. She smiled at her husband. But he looked at me the way this human looks at you. Like I was his entire universe. King Aldris joined them, his stern expression finally cracking. Love that brave, that honest. Perhaps it is exactly what Iridessa needs. We've grown so concerned with preserving tradition that we forgot tradition itself was built on courage. He turned to address the council. I withdraw the call for exile. Instead, I propose a new tradition. His gaze found Kale. Human, you've shown remarkable courage standing here. Do you truly love my daughter? With everything I am, Kale answered without hesitation. I'd walk through stars to keep her safe. Then prove it. Learn our ways, our language, our history. Become worthy not just of her heart, but of our people's trust. The king's expression softened. And Seraphine, teach him. Bridge our worlds as you've always been meant to do, just not in the way we expected. Tears streamed down Seraphine's face, her markings blazing brilliant violet gold. Thank you, Father. The bonding ceremony 3 weeks later wasn't the cold political arrangement with Tyralis. Instead, it was held under the twin moons in the Starlight Gardens where they'd first truly connected. Both luminary and human traditions intertwined, Kale's vows spoken in halting but sincere luminary, Seraphine's promises offered in his native tongue. When they pressed their foreheads together in the luminary gesture of ultimate trust, her markings flared so bright the entire garden blazed like daylight. The assembled witnesses gasped as Kale's skin began to glow faintly in response, a phenomenon no one had ever witnessed. Impossible, breathed an elder. The human resonates with luminary energy. Not impossible, Queen Ivessa said, smiling. Just proof that some bonds transcend biology. 1 year later, Kale and Seraphine stood on the observation platform overlooking the diplomatic quarter, a new section of the palace designed to house representatives from dozens of worlds. Their joined hands rested on the balustrade, their wedding bands catching the light of twin auroras. Your sister was right, Kale said, watching ships from distant systems dock at the floating ports. Opening Iridessa to other cultures, it's changing everything. We're changing everything, Seraphine corrected, leaning into his warmth. Her markings had developed new patterns since their bonding, golden threads woven through the violet, visible only when she was near him. You showed my people that love doesn't diminish us. It expands our capacity for everything. Below, they could see Mirel giving a tour to a delegation from Earth, her enthusiasm infectious. Voran had been removed from his position, though mercifully not exiled, a decision Seraphine had insisted on, believing in redemption over revenge. Kale turned to his wife, his queen, tucking a strand of silver hair behind her ear. Any regrets? Only one. Seraphine's eyes sparkled with mischief. That I didn't stare back at you harder that first night. We could have saved so much time. He laughed, pulling her close for a kiss that still sent light cascading across her skin. Around them, the twin moons climbed higher, illuminating not just Iridessa but the bridges being built between worlds, all because two people had the courage to look at each other and choose love. In the gardens below, the night-blooming flowers opened their petals to the starlight, and somewhere in the palace, another human diplomat smiled at another luminary noble, wondering if perhaps they too might dare to reach across the distance. The future, it seemed, was bright enough for everyone. The end.